All right, welcome everyone to this live session of Converge PoE. We're doing it live for Bixie because Bixie has gone virtual. Now, if you're like me and Joe, we were just talking about it, we're feeling like we've lost out a little bit on the virtual trade show. I mean, there's no drinking, there's no fighting, there's no...
walking by.
Yeah, I'm missing out, but...
Yeah? All the old friends, they're like, ah!
Yeah, exactly. They're not there. So we went ahead and solved the problem because, if you're like me, I want my screen time to be productive and entertaining. So what we've done for the Bixie conference is gathered top experts, our friends and people who are interested in PoE. They're the top experts in the world, and asked them to come do some quick presentation on relevant topics about Power over Ethernet intelligent buildings, including we covered concepting, designing, wiring, networking, creating wellness. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a link into the chats here in just a second about where you can see all of those live sessions. Now, as you can tell, Joe and I are sitting here in what looks like an office space, but it's not an office space. This is actually the PoE Texas Virtual Automation Set. And we built this space out for the Bixie and for other shows where you can actually see all the automations you can do with PoE lighting and automation. You can see access control, you can see tablet controllers, you can see lights, you can see N-Ocean switches that turn on and off without any batteries or wiring, and it's going to be a very cool set. So let us know what you would like us to do, whether you want to see PoE lighting and automation from doors to curtains to room controllers, to lighting. Tell us what you'd like to see. Now, today, Joe and I are going to show you live, mistakes, warts, and all, how to wire and configure a PoE lighting and automation room, in particular, a conference room, like we're sitting in. So obviously, we can't cover everything today. So feel free to send us a note in the chat. I'm watching the chat lines to let us know what rooms or devices you'd like us to configure next. This set is wired with wired with remote controllable PTZ cameras, so we can host a Zoom meeting, we could do live demos, we can show you what you'd like to see in terms of PoE for intelligent buildings. Now, let's go ahead and get started because I think everybody is ready to see the wiring and configuration. They're tired of hearing me threaten to do it. So let's go ahead and get started, Joe. PoE, lighting, and automation. All right, here we go. I am throwing up this. This shows you the space we're in, and you can tell we've got a pendant light suspended from a can light. We've got these two funny fixtures up front on either side of the television you can see behind me. And then we also have a third set of lights. Didn't capture it so well in the video, but they're hair lights, and they're in the suspended part of the ceiling, and they're designed to make your hair look good. So let's look at this is our rack. We used a Heckler credenza, which has 6U inside, and you can see on the left there, that's our power supply and PoE switch. That's a PoE Texas product. In the middle, that is our gateway, and then just to the right, you saw a link, which is a node or a driver for us that drives two LEDs. That link you see, it'll spin around, that link, the gateway is in the very middle, just under the warning. The link next to it is driving the two light fixtures behind me. So this is the setup. We've got this rack, we've got our gateway wired up, and you can see the gateway, it's just a simple one wire in to power and data. Actually, we show a micro USB cable, but we can add a PoE in there. So let's look at what it takes to wire one of these. So in this case, this is the hair light that we were talking about, and it is a warm, cool light fixture. So it can do 4-inch down light, and it does warm,
3,000 warm, 5,000 cool.
And you have to have two inputs in that, and we're going to connect it to that link, which is the PoE driver. Now you can see this driver has 4 outputs. They've got a brown wire and a white wire for each output. It also has 4 inputs. Now we're going to show wiring those inputs a little bit later, but what we're showing here are the tools that you'd need. You need obviously some wire strippers, you need some snips, and then you'll need some wire nuts. And then this is an important one here that I think really we should focus on and talk about real quick. This is the wiring schematic. And what you did with this, Joe, is you took the drawing from the manufacturer, you took the node drawing, and you mapped out the colors. Now, in this case, and you wrote that down. And, you know, as an installer, it helps to have that just written down on a notepad you carry with you.
Invaluable. It's just a one-time effort, and it will save you a ton of trouble later.
It will. And then you can reuse it, especially as you're doing more and more light fixtures.
Yep.
So I'm going to keep going on this one. So you could see he's got it where you connect the warm channel and the cool channel to the light fixture. And that's really important to figure out which output you want the warm and the cool to be.
Yep.
And then what Joe decided to do is to show how to run an extension 18 gauge wire so that the node can be, the driver can be kind of far away. So you can, 10, 20 feet, you can install the light and then the driver, or you can install it as close as you like. But the key here is that you're stripping the wires off and just using a 4-pair 18 gauge wire to run back to the node.
Up to 500 feet.
Up to 500 feet. And you're using these nice Wago, you call them
Wago connectors.
Wago connectors, you can call them wire nuts, but they're nice because they're just crimp on, you just push in the wire, snap it down, and it's worth the investment to make that effort.
Yeah, you don't have to twist and get the copper strands in your fingers.
Yeah, or the risk that you don't get that nut tight enough and it just pulls off. You can give it a little tug and you'll know for certain whether that's on there. And then what you did is you just did wire nuts on both ends of the cable. You already pre-stripped one end. And now, and what you're doing is you're going to now connect to the light fixture and to the node and wire it up. And it's a pretty straightforward process.
It is.
Now, I do have a question for you, Joe. While we're watching Joe's deft hands wire up these nuts, do we wire? By the way, Ricardo is saying you're a little bit hard to hear, so you might scoot next to me.
I'll scoot next to you.
And I'll move the mic over. Do you put cool on channel 1? Do you put warm on channel 1, or does it matter?
We always go warm, cool. So warm is on 1, cool is on 2, and if you have 2 sets of it, warm is on 3 and cool is on 4. You always go warm, cool, 3,000, 5,000. So
okay, warm, cool. Channel 1, cool, channel 2.
If you have RGBW, it's red, green, blue, white. So just that sequence. It's as you would say it.
Yeah.
Warm, cool, red, green, blue, white.
Okay, so keep that in mind. And as you're watching Joe, he's wiring up the nuts, the wire nuts here. He's going to do channel 1 to warm, channel 2 to cool. And he's just mapped the wires to show you go, and in this case, this light fixture came with like a red, black, and then a blue, green.
Yep.
But the fixture itself had a red, black, and then a blue, different color, right?
Yep. So I'm just mapping the color output of the fixture to the color of the wire to the color of the link node. And once you do it once and have a model, it's very quick and easy to reproduce it.
Yes, and you can see the while you're wiring it up, the wires themselves are we've got this set is brown and white.
Yep.
And each channel, output 1 and output 2, is brown and white.
Yep.
But it's marked on the tape which channel it is.
Yep.
So you'll be able to identify and say, all right, I'm going to wire up channel 1, channel 2, and it's channel 1 white, channel 2 white. Yep. Channel 1 brown, channel 2 brown, and you can wire it up.
Yep, and we're essentially just keeping the positive all the way through the wired chain and the negative all the way through the wired chain from the LED all the way to the link, so we know which way to drive the current. Because forward and backward does make a difference.
Yes, and an important note here, this is a constant current node. This is not a constant voltage node, and that's an important detail to make sure you know. the wiring for a constant voltage node will be different. And so now that you've wired up, now's the time to give it a test. And if you'll notice, we're doing this like on a bench. So you can make sure your wiring is right on a bench, on the ground, before you climb a ladder to do the light install.
Yep.
And what you're showing here is that rapid flashing light says the node is looking for an IP address. The slow flashing light, that indicates that you do now have an IP address and the device is identified on the network.
Yep, it's a great debug tool.
And then now you're going to show this is an interesting step. Each of the links comes with a sticker with a QR code that is the MAC address of the device. And this is an important time to take down a note what light fixture you're wiring to that MAC address, because you're going to configure it into the system later. And once you take that note and once you have it configured, you'll want to know that always. So if you didn't, go back and watch our video on designing the system, because you'll want to see how to identify the nodes. So that way, when you've got your node with its MAC address identified to a light fixture that's identified to a location on the drawing, you can take it all out there and install it.
Yes, we believe the installer has to have the tactical flexibility. We just need to know where in the world this physically landed.
Yes. And so now we're going to go up into the ceiling. This is up in the ceiling, and you can see Joe is wiring up a node here. And in this case, what he's going to do is he's going to wire up the pendant light that sits above my head and an input. Now, what you can tell is he's explaining that he very cleverly put wire nuts on the wires that he needs, so he pre-identified it with his drawing, and he knows what he's going to connect to it, which is a helpful and important step. And so he's also talking about the QR code to make sure you identify the QR code. You could actually have that pre-written down before you even climb the ladder, because Joe's standing on top of a ladder right now. And it's just the worst thing for an installer is have to go up and down and up and down.
Yep.
So this pendant that Joe is wiring is a single color pendant. So you only need one channel, but in this case, it's like a 50-watt light fixture, so it uses up most of the power budget available on that node or that link, because that link has a 72-watt budget.
Correct.
And then it's pretty straightforward. It's just a red wire and a black wire.
Yep.
And you do your red wire gets connected to
red to white, black to brown.
Red to white, black to brown. And if I understand right, the next generation of the cable sets are going to come out red and black.
Yeah.
So it's already going to be red and black for you, and you just red to red, black to black. And now Joe is wiring up the motion detector. And you may be going, well, what colors do I pick? In this case, per the manufacturer drawings, yellow is the input power, the 24-volt power, and then you have two outputs.
You have a ground, well, they have a gray, which is the reference ground common, and then they have a control 0 to 10 that we're going to connect up to one of our inputs.
Perfect. And so you can see that he wired up 0 to 10. The system will automatically detect whether it's 0 to 24 or 0 to 10 and identify that high-low.
Yep.
All right, and so now what he's doing is he's going to plug it in up there, and you can see as soon as you plug it in, the node will automatically transfer power to the device so that the device will power up, and you can confirm you're getting power and what device you're working on. And again, you can see the rapid blinking light as the device is identifying its IP address, and there you go.
There you go. And as Tyler said, we will push 100 milliamps through there, so without any commissioning, without any software, you can move in furniture.
Yes, so the lights will come on, it'll be working.
Yep.
All right, so now we've done the wiring. So if you guys have questions for Joe and myself about the wiring, go ahead and hit the chat line, send it to us. We are tracking to see if questions come. They take about 30 seconds to come through, but I'll get them. And now we've wired it up, right? Assume we've wired it up, all the light fixtures are in place, and we haven't done the drawings because the drawings were done before in our previous live stream. We also haven't done a big detail on hanging light fixtures because light fixtures kind of, you just see from the drawings and you install them based on the manufacturer.
Yep.
All right, so now let's go ahead and switch over to the next step of configuring. So we're going to configure this space as a conference room.
Yep.
And that's important because we want to know, you have to kind of know the functionality to be able to configure it properly. And then there are a couple of important steps to do. So we've wired it up. The first and obviously most important step that you have to take is you just have to log on. So let me bring that up. And I'm going to pause it here. What we're doing is this particular system, the core tap system that we have, as soon as you plug it in, the device itself becomes its own access point.
Yeah, this is a gateway.
It's a gateway, and it's its own access point. It starts broadcasting a Wi-Fi signal, which you can turn off, by the way, once you're done configuring it. But during configuring and setup, it's very helpful. You don't have to try and hunt through a network to find the gateway. The core tap is there, and as soon as you access it, you're on.
Yep. And the goal of the system is you don't need any special software, you don't need any special hardware. Literally, a laptop can configure, or an iPad can configure the system.
Perfect, perfect. And so let's kick this off again and make sure. So now you've gotten on. There is a password. We don't publish the password publicly. This is going live on YouTube, so we're not going to tell everybody the default passwords, just in case somebody leaves a default password. So then you travel to an IP address, which is listed on the device, and we'll call it out here. It is 192.168.70.1:3000.
Correct.
And the 3000 just represents the port you're actually accessing on the device.
The TCP port. Yep.
And that is the default IP address that you'll always find on all the gateways.
For the wireless, if you're coming in from the wired, it's whatever your router assigned it, also on 3000.
And if you have more than one gateway, which you can do, you can identify which gateway you're going into by picking the SSID associated with the gateway you want to go to.
Correct. Yep.
All right. So we're going to go into the gateway, and it's going to take you to the landing page. Now you can see Joe has already configured a set of light fixtures. So this is, you're seeing on the status page, the light fixtures of the device. The device is already configured. And that's what you're going to find on the status page. Now, when you're ready to configure, you look at the menu to the left, and you have your different options from configuration to scene settings, and we'll get to all of those. But let's go to configuration. So you click on the configuration tab, and now we're looking at fixtures or devices. So our definition is fixtures is any kind of output device on the system, and in this case, it's all light fixtures. And then we're going to be looking at how to identify your outputs. Now, you'll notice that we do have a couple of different types of outputs. We've got a DMX output, we've got an NOtion output, we've got a Synapse output.
We can do a number of different technologies.
Yes. Now, IDC represents the internal PoE-based devices, so that's where you're going to find the node that we wired up earlier.
Yes.
So let's go in and see how to configure that. So what you do is you'll just click configure a new device, and it'll bring up this menu. This is your fixture editor, and it is there by default. And what we're doing here is just giving it a name. This is where you want to give it this needs to be like a friendly name, right?
This is a friendly name that someone's going to understand.
Yes, because this is what's going to, like, when somebody pops up and wants to adjust the lighting on that fixture, that's what they're going to see. And then in this case, you're selecting the type of light fixture it is, whether it's an on-off, dimmable, color tuning. So you can pick which type. In this case, we're doing a color tuning fixture, which is the one we picked. And you're going to set the minimum color temperature at 3000, the maximum color temperature at 5000, and that's in Kelvin. And then tell us about the candle dim.
Well, you have the ability when you dim to warm. So natural light, when it dims down, shifts in its color temperature to a more warm setting. So if you dim cool lighting, it looks kind of gloomy. So if you go to any hospitality setup, typically it's all warm, and then they dim it and it just looks natural. With this, you can take a bright light that's at 5000, which is great for task type settings, and then as you dim it down, it gets warmer and warmer, so it has a much more natural feel to it.
Very cool. So there you go. That's what the candle dim feature represents. And let's go ahead and see the next. So we decided not to candle dim this one. And then now you need to find the device. So what you do is you select that, scan the network. So now it is looking all over the network for what types of devices are available.
Yep.
So it can take up to 5 minutes. I've never found it takes quite that long.
Oh.
So this is where it helps to have that MAC address that we had talked about, because now you can just search for that MAC address rather than having to look through a long list of addresses. And you can see you're searching for that MAC address for that specific light fixture, and you can see the MAC addresses. And by the way, for those of you who are unfamiliar, a MAC address is a unique identifier that any device has on there.
Every physical piece of hardware has a unique MAC address.
And so from an order of perspective, our nodes have an IP address, then they have a MAC address, and then each of the outputs and inputs have their own function on that MAC address.
Correct.
Okay. So now that we've picked it and we know what MAC address, now we need to do a couple of configurations to make sure we tell it what type of device it is. And so what you're seeing is that you're turning off the trunking. And what does the trunking do for us, Joe?
Trunking essentially allows you to put more than one output together to supercharge into a fixture. So if you need like more than 50 watts on a given output, we can actually trunk 2 or more of those together. And essentially it's a networking term. So if you took 200 megabits, put them together, you get 200 megabit. This effectively is doing that in the current world. So I can supercharge the current going out of the device in order to support much higher loads. Most LED fixtures today do not need that.
Okay, so you'll disable that.
It's rare that you'll need it.
And then since you've selected this as a CCT, you'll see that you have your output channels 1 and 3. Warm on channel 1, cool on channel 2.
Exactly.
And what you're going to do is say, we're picking this one as channel 1. We're setting up the first one on the light fixture. And then this is my personal favorite, is you're going to then test the power. So I noticed you marked it as front left because you wanted to identify it. We have different graphical representations of the type of fixtures. This is a pendant fixture that the customer is using. Now we're doing a power test. You're going to configure the output power of the light fixture. You hit test. It's going to actually go out there and test to make sure that the fixture matches those specifications, and then you're there. Now we're going to these are more advanced settings. They're typically not super important to set, but if you're really setting it up, why not? So this is the manual ceiling and the manual floor, which is the high-end brightness you can achieve and the low-end brightness. And when you get below a certain dim level, it turns it off. Now this tells it whether to...
what levels to go to when it sees an occupancy message or a vacancy message.
And then the next is for daylight response.
What level do I go to when I see a message that says 30-foot candles? That allows you to do all kinds of daylight setting.
And then this last setting is being able to do power budget estimates where you can track and say, this is what the power budget would have been for a 100-watt fixture. This is what the actual power budget is. This is what the max load is. You can also put in the manufacturer name and model.
Yeah, so we actually, most people just look backward, retro. We actually also want to give you the ability to look forward. So like New York City has instituted a budget for the next 4 years, so we're giving you a tracking looking forward, not just looking in reverse.
Very cool. So you've done that for the New York.
Yes, so we're in New York, but anybody can leverage this and tell you how you're doing relative to your target, not just how you're doing relative to how it was.
Very exciting. So now you've done that light fixture. Let's see, what are we on now? We've gotten that light fixture put in, it's created, and let's see, now you can go into the scene override and actually adjust the light fixture and see the light fixture responding in terms of brightness and in terms of color temperature. And you can adjust that. All right, so that is setting up and configuring your first light fixture. Obviously, the process repeats itself as you go through the rest of the light fixtures.
And for larger installs, we can automate a lot of this, so we can help you out. If you give us the information, we can actually help script some of this. So for several hundred fixtures, we actually have a ton of automation tools that expedite this.
Very cool. Because you want to, if you're doing 500 fixtures, you want to just be able to say these 400 are these, configure them, and then you can do some
give us the data
customization,
and we'll zip
upload
up the database.
So now let's look at configuring an analog input. And I say analog, and I apologize, I should be careful. It's not a true analog. It could be either a 0 to 10 volt analog signal, or it can be like a 0 to 24 volt digital signal. But this is supposed to indicate a wired input device.
Yes.
And in this case, the wired input device is on our PoE node. We saw wiring up that motion detector. In this case, I think you're going to configure a button. So you go to Configuration tab, and then you scroll down to your inputs. And in this case, we are looking for that IDC input again, because that's the PoE wired solution. So once you go in there, you just add a new one, and it's going to bring up this dialog. And obviously, you can name it. You want to give it the name. Again, a friendly name for people using it. Now, a quick note here that's important. You can't have spaces in the names.
Correct, because HTML does not like spaces.
You got to go do like an underscore or a dash.
Underscore, yes.
And then you could say what type of input it is. In this case, it's a dimmer switch. It's on channel 1 or input 1 of the particular node, because you know that from your notes. I'm wired up to 1. And then you're going to scan your network for where you have inputs available to pick from. And again, we talked about noting down your MAC address. Know what your MAC address is to make it much faster to search for and select the MAC address or device you're working with. And there you go. You got a dimmer control button. Uploaded, ready to go. And now we are ready to test it out. Let's see, we're going to go down here, and you can see we started over again. So I'm looping the data. All right. So go ahead and hit us with any questions. So far, we've done configured a light output. We've done an input, which is a switch, and that could also very well be a motion detector. Now we are going to do one that I think is very cool. We are going to configure an N-Ocean light switch. And what's exciting about these is these light switches do not require batteries. They don't require wiring. They're just put it on the wall and it works. So let's figure out how to configure one of those. And it's a very surprisingly easy process. So I'm going to bring that up. So you go to your configuration page, navigate down to your inputs. It comes that you land by default on the N-Ocean tab, and then you're going to select new, obviously, because you want to add. Now, what's going to be interesting here is there's a little bit of stuff going on off screen. But first you give a title to it, again, a friendly one. And with these N-Oceans, you could see, for example, this one. Let me see if I can get this close enough for you to see. It's got basically 4 buttons. It's a 4-button rocker switch. You're going to want to identify it as a button rocker. And then it'll automatically configure. Once you configure it, it'll say _1, _2 to identify which of the rocker buttons it is. So let's go ahead. Now you're going to give it an N-Ocean device ID. Now what you did is, in this case, you found that it's Illumira as the product, because that has the drivers. And then what you're going to do is actually turn on the system. That console monitors. So what you're not seeing off screen is basically somebody's pushing the buttons here. And what is happening is the gateway is monitoring the N-Ocean channel for button pushes. And then you can see what it is it'll identify it as this device, this number string of devices of the device. And then you just simply copy and paste that device ID into the N-Ocean ID, save changes, and there you go. It recognizes that it's a 4-button switch, and it creates the 4 buttons for you right there on the screen.
Right down the screen.
And you can test it out by pushing the buttons, and you can see the button change state on the screen while you're looking at it. All right, guys, we're doing well. Now we're at our 30 minutes, but we have a few more things to configure. If you can stick with us just a few more minutes, I think you'll find it's worth it. But if you can't, go ahead and head out. We will be jumping on the chat line while the Bixby exhibit is open and answering any other questions you have. But I want to finish because I'm excited. Now I'm deep into this, and there's just a few more to do. So now we're going to configure into groups. And what a group represents is a subset of lights that work together. And kind of what you're thinking about in terms of a group is I have 4 2x4s in my office, and I want them all to behave the same way at the same time based on something. So what we do is we group. Now, an important feature about the type of groupings that we're picking, because grouping will want to control together, you have to pick the same types of light fixtures to go in a group.
Correct.
And they have to be CC, they have to be color tunable or dimmable or on-off. You can't group together an on-off light and a color tuning, because when you try and tell that light to color tune, it's just not going to do anything.
Exactly.
And it's going to, and I'm sure you could try and force it, but from a utility perspective, it really doesn't make sense.
Right.
All right, so we're going to kick this guy off. So here we are. What happens is once you've populated all your light fixtures, you will see the fixtures available to you to be able to group here on that upper left side.
Based on the group type.
Based on the group type. And then you can, what you'll do is you'll come in and you will look at your groups, make sure you have the right ones. They'll have their names. And you're going to create a new group. And then you're going to give it a name, again, an easy name, recognizable name like your entry or conference room. And then you pick the type. In this case, you're picking a color tunable device. You can do it based on brightness or dimming, color temperature, RGB, RGBW, RGBWC, RGBW, AWC. You've got lots of group types that you can choose, and it'll present what types of controls you want for that light fixture. So once you pick the color temperature in this case, an interesting note, global is an interesting because, tell me if I've got this right, the global allows that group to be called from a different gateway.
Yes.
So you can decide, you know what, I only want this to be controlled by the local gateway, or I want it to be controlled globally.
Yes.
And the reason why you would do that is as you're dividing your spaces into gateways and your core tap is, let's say for this virtual tour, I've got one here and then I've got another core tap next door, and they both can see each other on the network. I can use, if I click global, I can control it from that core tap, but if I don't click global, the other core tap won't see the lights in here, which is important if you've got a space divided and physically segregated, and you don't want core taps controlling each other. So that is kind of what the global note is. All right, so we're not going to go global because we only have one core tap in this space. And now we're going to, once we've decided whether to go global or not, because we're going global, you can set the daylight sensor. In this case, we're setting it at default.
Right, so if you want to have a daylight group, you can create a group that listens to a specific sensor. Each fixture in that group can respond independently, which is what we saw earlier. You can have a primary group, a secondary group, however you want.
Very cool. So Erica is asking, can you trigger from lutron cassette switches?
So if they have a dry contact, a wet contact, which is 0 to 24, or any 0 to 10 output, we can trigger off of that.
Okay.
So we look at any momentary, maintained, or 0 to 10 input from any manufacturer, and we can trigger off of those.
And that's important because then you're not like limited to, I have to buy this very niche design. Right. If somebody has a light fixture, they want to, they can. All right, so now that you've created your group, it's really just this matter of picking the groups that go together, and then you're just going to drag and drop those right into the field below, and that identifies it. You're now in this group.
This is where it gets fun.
Yep, and so what you'll do is you'll create that group, and that establishes the group and that organization, and you can see by that tab across the top there what groups they are and what group control you have available to you.
Yep. So just a good example of where this may come into play is a 60-foot 64-foot long recessed linear fixture may actually have 4 or 8 nodes controlling it. Each of them can have a group of 8 segments, and then you group the groups into a fixture, and then that fixture gets grouped into a group of groups of the room.
And we're just about to cover that. So now we're going to cover the grouping groups. So in this case, you go back to the group tab, and you can make organizations based on a small group that makes up bigger groups, that makes up bigger groups. And the process is basically the same, is you simply click to create a new group. And in this case, what you're identifying is you're showing some of these are made up of groups, and some of those are groups of groups. So go ahead and we're going to click and make a new group of different light fixtures.
Yep. Exactly.
All right, so let's watch you do it. Here we go. We're going to create a new group, name it, pretty straightforward stuff. And in this case, you're going to make it color temperature again because you're making a group of color temperature fixtures.
Yep.
And we don't need to go global.
Nope, not on this one.
So then what we do is once we'll make sure we've navigated to that new group for the entryway in this case. You make sure you're there, and then what you'll do is you'll just grab the groups available and drop groups in there, and you can make a group with multiple groups inside. So you're dragging and dropping all the color tunable fixtures into this bucket so they all behave as one device.
Yep.
And it's that straightforward, and it gives you a lot of power to be able, because you can invoke or control by group, or you can control by group of groups, depending on what action you want it to do.
Yes.
All right, so now let's take it up the next step. Well, what if I want to control light fixtures of different types? Because maybe I do want to have a situation where I turn on one light and another light that one's color tunable, one's not.
Yes.
That's created in the scenes. So we're going to see how to create a scene, and that you just navigate to the overwrite scene edit, and that is a place where you can do a whole scene with a bunch of different types of light fixtures. And the process for that is creating a new scene name, naming conventions apply, again deciding whether you want to go global or not. In this case, you're creating a conference room, and we needed to, in this conference room, use a scene because we had some color tunable, some not color tunable, some 4-inch can lights, some linear, pendant, a whole bunch of different light fixtures. So we decided not to go global. We're going to control this locally. And now we start to decide what the different light fixtures will do. So in this case, we have, for example, now I'm going to be looking at a can light. We've got can lights, we got pendants, and in this case, this is a color tuning can light. So we're going to adjust the can lights settings to what you want it to be for that scene. And then once you've adjusted the settings that you want, and the lights will actually respond while you're sitting there looking at them.
Usually see it.
And then you just drag and drop the fixture right into the bin, and that will take those settings and that fixture and associate it to that scene. So whenever you say, I want this scene, it'll set the light to that. Any light that you put in there.
Yep, it'll remember the setting for each fixture and literally roll through the entire list and set it to that level.
Perfect. And that's all you need to do. And in here, you can actually continue to adjust. You can edit. You just say, adjust the light settings, and then hit edit, and it'll adjust that.
Right.
And that way, you can get the light fixture to exactly what you want it to be. You can edit it. You can tweak it up and down. This will be useful in this conference room because we wanted to do a scene for face-to-face meetings and a scene for live streaming or streaming from the camera. And that's really important because you look different when you're on camera than when you're doing a standard meeting.
Yes.
So let's keep going on now, because now that you've created your groups, you've created your scenes, now you have your last major step. And that is going to be doing what we're calling logic binding. And that's associating inputs to outputs. And it's a pretty straightforward process, but it feels a little bit like programming. And we're going to go through it slowly, make sure we show how to do it. But it'll make sense once you see it once or twice. And the idea is a button push. Any of the inputs you pick, a button push, motion detector, any stimulus, you can associate with either a fixture, or a group, or a scene, or even an action.
Send an email.
You can, send an email. You can notify your mom. Chris, who is a longtime viewer of ours, is asking, how about studio theater applications? And that is a very interesting question, Chris. We are looking at how we're going to integrate with vMix. We're talking to Tom, and we were checking out vMix just this morning. We were looking at it, and it looks like with vMix you can do a script. And what we want to do is we're going to try and create a series of scripts that you can just import into vMix and then say, do this.
We also support both DMX in and out, so we can accept DMX from an external initiator, or we can be the initiator and control DMX targets. So we can take a webhook in, for example, and send it out to a DMX bank, or we can take an external input and adjust a 0 to 10 fixture. So that's another way we can get into studio applications.
And an interesting point on that I think we should make sure we point out to people is because you can do DMX in and DMX out, you can pick one system to configure both your theatrical lighting and your house lighting. So, I mean, think about it this way. You could dim the lights to tell everybody it's time to go into the viewing space, the theater, the house of worship. And then you can also make sure that the doors, release and swing closed.
Maglocks open.
Exactly. Do all those kinds of things. And you can still control the DMX light fixtures you've got on the front, which is very cool.
Yeah.
So here we are. We're back on the configuration page. And the logic binding is at the very bottom. So you can see we have 4 buttons that we've created from our in-ocean device. We've got our light fixtures above. Now we're going to go down to what we call the logic binder. And this is just a series of actions or commands to associate inputs to outputs.
Yep.
And it's pretty straightforward. You give it a name of what you want that to do. And in this case, we're going to invoke a specific scene. We're invoking the conference room scene to start with conference room scene 1 or 2, and you can give it a description to help people know what you're doing with it. And then you go to the conditions and you basically pick your input.
One of your inputs that you set up.
Yep, you got those inputs to set up. You're going to pick your inputs, and in this case, you're going to say, if I hit the rocker 3, and you basically, you test your rocker, figure out what rocker 3 is, and then you say, as long as that rocker 3, when that rocker 3 is active, meaning the button is pushed, it will invoke a scene, and then you just pick your conference room scene.
Yes.
And then all you do is add it to there. Now, what you're going to do is you can add multiple actions too. You could say, I wanted to invoke the conference room scene, and we'll show adding more actions later. In this case, you just want to do one thing, but you can add dozens of things with it. And then you just save the input block. Once you do that, it's created. And then as soon as you do that association, when you push that button, it will invoke that scene.
Yes. You've now bound the two.
Yep, they're locked up together, ready to go. Now, and then when you're ready to do your next one, you simply go back and refresh the screen, and you're ready to start making your next one.
Yep. One of the capabilities that we can do with this logic binder that's unique is partition logic. For example, if you're in a hotel and you have wall partitions, we can detect when a door is open or closed and dynamically change the groups that are affected by a wall button press. So if you have 6 partitions, all the doors closed, this button only affects room A. Open a partition, now the button is controlling room AB. So this logic binder is powerful enough to walk into a situation with dynamic walls and be able to dynamically respond to which lights respond to that single event.
And that's very cool. And the key here is what I like about that is you're using door contacts that you would normally use for your security and access control, and you're using it for lighting. You're getting much more out of your hardware.
Yes.
All right, so we're creating a new scene new logic here, and this logic is cool because it's going to have multiple actions.
Yes.
And in this case, what you're doing is if the occupant sensor is less than or equal to its 1, which would be its on-off state, then it's going to go over and it's going to start doing a process. And this is one of your signature logic things, I know. What you do is if it detects the space is empty, it's going to turn the space to 30% to freak somebody out. If they're asleep, they'll wake up and start moving around.
Yes.
And then you tell it, wait 60 seconds at 30%.
Yep.
To see if somebody jumps up and starts moving around and waving their arms and going, hey, I'm here. And then if it doesn't hear anything further, it turns off the lights. And that's a signature Joe program.
I think it's known in the industry maybe as a dim warning.
I think I still say it's a Joe signature situation. So that is it, ladies and gentlemen. That is how and then you'll obviously save. Don't forget to save all of your logic. You'll be upset if you keep programming them and don't hit save.
Gotta hit save.
And that's really it, ladies and gentlemen. That is wiring and configuring a system. So I'm going to throw us back into our main screen here. And if you're curious and you would like to know more, you can always hit us up at sales@poetexas.com. You'll talk to Erica. Joe and I are going to get onto the Bixie chat after this. So feel free to ask questions now or later. So we do have a question from Chris. I'm going to throw this up so that we can see it on the screen here. Chris would like to know, we're about to install professional lighting to a jazz club for the purpose of a live audience, but we also want to dial the lighting. And Chris, I am sorry here, we lost it on the screen. To dial in the lighting for the live streaming show, we are installing 6 PTZ cameras. And you got to get the lighting right, and you want the lighting to be controllable. So Chris, I think the smart play here is drop us a line. We'll get you in touch with Joe, and Joe can walk you through how to create the lighting for that. And what I think is cool is the different types of light fixtures that are available for theater lighting, because up until now, controllable and automated lighting needed to be, for theater productions, pretty much had to be DMX. But if and obviously DMX is like the high end, it does everything you want, super smart. But if you need kind of that middle road to house level, PoE lighting and automation can get that for you without the same price premium.
Right. Theatrical grade controls at a regular price.
Yes. So, very cool. Well, hit us up with questions, ladies and gentlemen. We love answering questions, and we feel like we're very honored, and I apologize, I got my wrong title here. We feel like it's an honor to be able to present to everybody at Bixie and to our live streaming friends. So, thank you for coming today. You'll find this on YouTube, and check out our live streams that we're going to do throughout the week. I'm going to throw those links into the chat right now because I promised I would. And you could see all the different types of presentations we are doing. And we're very excited about these. Tomorrow morning, we are going to have a fantastic pair of experts come in and talk about how to use how to save money using PoE. PoE for intelligent buildings. And that is with Seaman. And then later that day, we're going to be hosting Igor again. Igor has been a hugely popular guest on our show. They do PoE IoT, which includes lighting and sensors, and they're going to be talking about some really cool new technology, especially about occupancy detection and the technology of occupancy detection, which is really unique and special. Okay. So, join us tomorrow morning. We'll be back 9:15 a.m. Pacific, 9:45 a.m. 9:15 a.m. tomorrow morning Pacific, 11:15 a.m. Central. Thank you so much for joining us. We love seeing all of you guys out there. Hit Joe and I with any questions, and we will see y'all next time. And I'm going to exit with a flourish. Yep. That was a lot of information. For 30 minutes, we didn't even make 35 minutes. That was a whole 45 minutes.
We had a lot of information in there, I know, and we only scratched the surface.
And that was fast. We
didn't get the scene list. We didn't talk about history and timeline or anything.
No.
There's no complaint. I'm glad we do what we did. That's 80% right there of what you need to know.
Yes.
Other stuff is good.